All right. Hey there, restoration industry. I'm excited to be joined by Ed Baldwin, who has helped make all of the TPA interviews and MRP interviews that we've done at PLRB Claims Conference possible. So thank you very much for lining all those up. I've appreciated the partnership. So I want to chat with Ed about Profile Gorilla now and about background checks and credentialing and all of that, which is a huge deal for contractors and a big hurdle for anybody to overcome and a big deal on the claim side. So for people who don't know you, go ahead and introduce yourself first and talk about Profile Gorilla.
Sure. So Ed Baldwin, founder of Profile Gorilla. Ultimately, we set out with a vision based on voice of customer from contractors that basically said, hey, it's hard for us if we want to be on multiple insurance programs, multiple client programs, to have to provide all the same information to 20, 30, 50 different companies, insurance licenses. And so we kind of heard that need and had heard similar frustration
Yep.
on the other side, where the insurance carriers and the contractor networks that have to collect all that same stuff, there's just a huge amount of overlap and redundancy that just slowed everything down. So the need was, hey, can we centralize that and make it easy for contractors to go through that process once, and then be on as many programs and work as many carriers and clients as
Sure.
they wanted to do, and not have to worry about that administrative layer. And we kind of set out to do that 10 years ago, and this is our 10th year, and I think we've largely succeeded. So we're pretty excited to be at this point.
Perfect. So we asked all the TPAs who came through what they thought the biggest pain point was in the industry. So I'm curious what you think it is.
Yeah, so I think on the client side, so the carrier
Mhm.
or the manager pair side, is really the experience. I think there's a lot of data that says if a homeowner has a bad situation, an insurance loss, a water loss, a fire loss, that their customer satisfaction rating
Yep.
really goes up if they're kind of contractors recommended to them.
Mhm.
That process is kind of managed in some way, whether that's full managed repair or just introductions and tools to kind of connect. Just my house is on fire or my house is flooded. Last thing I want to do is have to go figure out who can come fix that
Yep.
and how much should they be charging me and what do I need to ask. So I think there's the piece that is really trying to kind of fill that gap. I think there's a lot of growth. I mean, we've seen just in our own partnerships 5 to 6 new contractor network TPA MRPs develop over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
We're seeing more coming. That's got to be driven by demand,
Mhm.
right? So I think that's the piece of kind of what they're trying to fill
Yep.
is that experience gap.
Sure. Okay, I want to walk into some big news that you have to share, but as we edge our way there, talk about the different types of credentials and backgrounds that you're
Sure.
looking into. What all are you assessing or evaluating?
So this is such a good question because I think what maybe some folks that we work with, especially on the service pro side, don't know about us is that we do a tremendous amount of advocacy on behalf of the contractor.
Yeah.
So I think that it's important to know that the industry doesn't like risk. We're in insurance, right? We're like
Yeah.
no one likes risk.
Yeah.
There's people that's all they do for a living is assess risk, and those people work in insurance carriers. So a lot of cases you're going to see when new contracts come out, a desire to eliminate risk in the realm of service provider
Yes.
vetting and credentialing. And so we've seen that in the nature of maybe requirements coming out for background checks to be run every year versus
Mhm.
3 years, or new insurance policies need to be added that maybe weren't added before,
Yep.
additional coverages, higher limits. I think sometimes what gets missed in the human evaluation of that is that all has a very real cost. Background checks cost money.
Yes.
Insurance costs money, and that is a cost
Yep.
that doesn't get reflected in your estimate that you write.
Mhm.
Right, that is an operational expense that you have to incur as a contractor business, that you don't always directly get reimbursed for.
Mhm.
It's just the cost of doing business. And so, we've really become a trusted voice in this space where we'll say, look, we understand you're trying to reduce risk,
Yep.
but what you're asking for is not going to move the needle to reduce risk. But what it is going to do is force your supply chain out
Sure.
of the industry because it's just too expensive to operate here. So that's what we try to do in that space is really do a little bit of advocacy for contractors, but also ensure that the things that they do need to have, they have.
Mhm.
And so obviously the kind of the big areas of kind of credentialing, obviously insurance.
Yeah.
And no matter what trade a service pro does, there's basic insurance like general liability and workers' comp that's always going to be required. But where I think some folks aren't as aware
Mhm.
is, especially in our space, if you do water mitigation or you do water restoration work, there's a whole bunch of other insurance policies like pollution insurance
Yep.
that some folks aren't familiar with. If you work with contents, there's Bailey's property coverage people might not be familiar with. If you do expert opinions, there's professional liability insurance. Some folks require umbrella insurance. So I think it's important for any contractor, and this advice we give folks is go price that insurance before you decide to enter MRP
space.
property
Yeah.
space, right?
Yep.
Because the last thing you want to do is go sign up and get all excited and then only find out you have this huge quote that
Yeah.
you weren't ready for.
Yeah.
You got to evaluate that in the decision. So insurance is big. I'd say the second biggest is probably licensing. Obviously, based on the trade they perform, if they're in a state that requires licenses,
Yep.
we make sure they have the right licenses. We're also an advisor here. Sometimes contractors want to offer new services they've never offered before. They'll come to us and say, "Hey, what do I need to go get to be able to
Right.
offer those services?" And they'll also say, "If I offer those services, do you know is there a demand? Is there a need for those that you can help connect me to more business?"
Mhm.
Absolutely, we can. That's what we do. I'd say the third biggest category is background checks.
Yep.
And so there has been a real shift in the industry over the last 5 years from originally maybe collecting like an attestation if we do background checks. And then we kind of saw an evolution to where only the owner's background checks were required. And really kind of where the industry is now is owner background checks and then field staff. So employees that go to the job site, that's now kind of the current best practice
Yep.
of the background checks you want to have. Most of the industry is on 7-year checks, meaning they go back 7 years.
Mhm.
A couple carriers they want to go back to age 18. But I think that's another area we are big advocates. Personally, if someone made a dumb decision
Mhm.
25 years ago, maybe involving a
Yes.
food and beverage.
Yep.
Questioning is that bad decision 20 years
Yeah.
ago, should that impact their ability to get business today? We would advise our partners it shouldn't, right? Some of that's out of people's hands, but that's another way that we are advocates for the contractors, service pros in our network to kind of say, challenge the status quo,
Yeah.
right? Is that a big issue? But I would say as far as paperwork goes, by far the biggest category of things we collected credential from just number of documents is certification. So things like IICRC certifications, EPA led certifications, but
Yep.
definitely IICRC is the biggest, just in the number of those that we collect on our mix.
Great segue. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. So talk about IICRC and your new integration and how that just got a lot
We
easier.
are extremely excited to announce a real-time integration with IICRC, a
Mhm.
huge partnership between our two entities that has multiple value points. One is IICRC is an extremely prestigious brand in our
Yes.
space. More and more carriers, more and more of the partners are starting to require that
Yep.
in order to receive claim work. But what we see in our space is, there will be unfortunately there will be a bad element where
Mhm.
fraud will creep into that.
Yep.
Unfortunately, in the days of Adobe Acrobat, Photoshop, it's not hard to open something up and doctor it. And so part of where we bring value to a partner like IICRC is as a bit of a shield.
Yeah.
If we're independently validating those certs, then if we come across one that's not legitimate,
Mhm.
we're able to protect our partners by alerting that as well as protect IICRC.
Sure.
So to our partners, there's value, but really what I'm the most excited about is the value it brings to the contractors. So, a lot of times the contractor person will control the mailing address that's
Yep.
supposed to come to,
Yep.
and they move. And
Yep.
so what happens is, people's certifications come up for renewal, they expire, but then they don't come in the mail. And who knows what address they enlisted to be mailed to.
Yes.
A lot of these companies get turned off for jobs until those certs arrive in the mail and they scan them and upload them, and then they get turned back on. Well, that could be months
Yeah,
that they're deactivated for jobs just because they're waiting on a
piece of paper.
piece of mail, right? So the real power of the integration is if any contractor on our network says, hey, we renewed it,
Mhm.
we can actually real time ping IICRC's database, validate that it was renewed, and we independently stamp it as certified that it was renewed, and they don't ever get turned off. So we're not worried about the paper coming in the mail anymore.
Yep.
We say we certified independently that it's renewed, it's still active, it's good. Here's the cert types they have, and they can stay activated for work. So that's another layer of administrative burden that we've removed from the contractors because they don't have to go scan those things or upload them like
Yeah.
historically. So it will bring stability to the entire kind of mitigation and restoration space where these certs are critical.
Yep.
But now we can have that real-time integration with IICRC.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Congrats on that. That's a
yeah.
big deal. All right, going back to the insurance topic,
Mhm.
how many times do you, or what are some of the common misses you see where stores have on policies where it's like, nope, you got to add that or do this, or
Sure.
a lot of times I know that it's also, it's not even the contractor's fault, or it's brokers that are unaware or whatever. There's
Yeah.
education there.
So I think, one of the things we try to educate our clients on is they view insurance as a commodity, which it is in some ways. But there'll be a desire to gravitate towards the lowest cost insurance,
Yeah.
right? I'm trying to
Yeah.
save money. I'm running a business. I want to be profitable. And hey, I saw this advertisement for this new insurance that's super fast and super cheap. I'm going to go that path. But the problem is like the way that policy is wrapped around their business will have a lot of gaps that they may not even be aware of.
Yep.
And so while they may think, oh, the insurance carrier or the contractor network or Profile Gorilla is making me go get all this insurance, the reality is we're making sure that they have the right insurance for their business in
Yes.
case something happens with them. It's not really
Right.
for the contractor network or the insurance carrier or
Yeah.
us. It's so that if they have an issue, their insurance covers them,
Yes.
right? That's really what we're trying to help educate. So when you talk about common misses, a lot of cases there are endorsements
Mhm.
that are required that add your clients as an additional insured.
Yep.
That's critical. Another big one is for the networks that do roofing. Roofing is the number one trade excluded from general liability insurance. So if you look at like of all the trades people do,
Yep.
which one's the most commonly excluded? That's roofing,
Okay.
right? So you have a lot of roofers that go get insurance and they don't even know that their insurance doesn't even cover them at all.
Mhm.
The minute that they file a claim and the insurance carrier they finds out they do roofing, no coverage, right? And so and the reality of that is if you're a small business and you have an issue and your insurance doesn't cover you, that could be a out of business event,
Yes.
right? And so it's just really important with a service pro when you get insurance to be very accurate and transparent as to the trades that you want to provide.
Yeah.
You can't say you're a handyman. Don't say you're a carpet cleaner unless you're a carpet cleaner, right? Or unless you're a handyman. But that may get you
Don't-
cheaper insurance, but those paths will lead to gaps in your coverage that will ultimately hurt your own business
Yes.
versus having the right coverage to be
It's different crashing a semi than crashing a car, and if you have the
100%.
wrong kind of
Yeah.
insurance, it's
100%,
not
right?
the same. Yes. I'm curious kind of your takeaways from all the interviews we've done.
Yeah, we had a lot of interviews, a lot of good information. I think we heard a lot of similar information and a little bit of different information. I think one of the things we heard consistently was that the contractor networks, kind of deferring that the insurance carriers that were setting the pricing requirements, meaning that carriers above everybody are dictating a core logic for theirs.
Yep.
And that is true. I think the contractor networks sometimes get a bad rap for their rules, but just like with us, the contractor networks don't necessarily set the vetting rules either.
Yeah.
The carriers set those rules in those contracts,
Yeah.
right? So I think it leads me to another sort of investigation question contractors should ask, which is if they're going to join a contractor network, they should say, well, what carriers do you support, and there are additional requirements
Yeah.
to be on different carriers and service you, because that's another surprise, right?
Yes.
You may find out you join a program, but then if you want to be on a different carrier with that program,
Yep.
you may have to go get foremost. You may have to go get different insurance.
Yes.
And that's just dictated by the carrier versus the contractor network itself. We heard a lot of mention of CoreLogic, right?
Yep.
And their movement and their success, and how more contractors are having to make the consideration, should we consider learning Symbility, trying Symbility out. I can tell you, I mean, we're hearing the same thing.
Yep.
That there's a massive job opportunity out there for contractors if they're willing to sign up and learn Symbility.
Yes.
It's a secondary option to what they may already have, which is good. I was, pleased to hear that most of the folks we talked to over the last couple of days said that they are open to looking at custom price lists or
Yeah.
modifications to pricing, especially on line items that may be material driven.
Yep.
Items. So that was good news. The same things that always kind of come up, which is documentation. If you're
Yep.
if you're gonna bill for it, document it. That always comes up.
Yes.
That's a recurring theme.
Yes.
But it was encouraging to hear a lot of them mention the fact that we as a partner were able to help connect more service pros to their opportunity. And the service pros having an option to get connected to some new opportunities was also good to hear.
So you have a lot of credentials that your team has to look through. How big is your team, and how do you keep track of, like, if you're talking about all these contractors and then all these
Yeah.
different programs, and that's a lot of
Yeah.
requirements and moving pieces.
It is. So we have a team of about 40 folks.
Okay.
Not all of those do credentialing. We have technology folks and other team members.
Yep.
But I think folks need to realize we're a 10-year-old company, and we have heavily invested in technology over 10 years. And really for the first time in the last couple of years, artificial intelligence really is now really more easily accessible to businesses my size.
Yeah.
Whereas never was before.
Yeah.
And so we're leveraging a lot of artificial intelligence in our environment as well. But yes, I mean, when you look at the sheer numbers, I think over so end of Q4 is always a business time of year for us. The majority of documents expire 12/31 of every year.
Yeah.
So when you look at what taxes us as a business, usually the end of Q4 and then halfway through Q1 is our busy season.
Yep.
Just because everything's expired, but then it's also when everyone goes on vacation. It's
Yep.
very hard for us to get things we need and get things fixed that we need. But just in this quarterly cycle, we processed over 10,000 insurance certificates like in 2 months.
And that's just insurance. That's
Just
not
insurance. Doesn't include licenses, background checks, certs. And so I mean it's I think a lot of folks are surprised when they find out the size of our team. But it's
It would have to
with the
be.
technology that we built. But that's also why we're able to give our service to the contractors for $25 a month. Right, because if it was all 100% people driven,
Yeah.
that price would have to be substantially higher. And our
course.
goal is to keep that price approachable.
Yes.
Whether you're a 2-man contractor or national.
Yeah.
That price, it shouldn't be a deal breaker for most.
Perfect. Anything else you want to add that we haven't chatted
No, I
about?
think just to close out, I want to say thank you to you for being willing to do this with us.
Of course.
It's fun.
Really fun.
You have an idea, you don't know, you don't know maybe you're willing to do it. How's it going to work out? I thought it went great.
Dead.
I thought it was good exposure for some up and coming programs that
Yeah.
maybe people haven't heard about. That maybe might be trying to do things different, whether they do or not, I guess it remains to be seen, but are trying to do some new things. I think it does remind me that, the branding thing is interesting. I think we heard companies that definitely did not want to be called an MRP.
Yep.
Right? They were kind of adamant, I'm not
Yep.
an MRP, I'm this,
Yep.
and that's maybe a sign that there may be something new on the horizon or the way things are being done. But
Yes.
but I think at the end of the day, it was cool to see our partners that have invested in us have an opportunity to spend a couple minutes with us. But at the end of the day, thank you.
Thank you.
For doing this with us. We enjoyed it.
I did too. It was a lot of fun. Thanks.
All
Ed.
right. Thank you.